Hey folks, this is Nate speaking. Kennedy and I are going to be going out of town this week for a little bit, but I have several thoughts that I want to share to flesh out following Mark's sermon on Sunday concerning the Exodus. So I've got 4. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get them all done. Hopefully I can get them all done before we leave, but that is my goal. So today I want to flesh out the idea of Mount Sinai and God's holiness. This is something that is in the book of Exodus. It's after the event of the Exodus, so we didn't get to cover it. We've got far too much to cover. It's so little time, but I wanted to look at some verses today and look at how Mount Sinai communicates God's holiness and some other things. So we're going to be looking at Exodus 19, actually just that chapter in and of itself. In context of the whole story of Exodus, Israel, remember, were slaves in Egypt. They were brought out. Moses led them through the Red Sea, defeating the powers of Pharaoh. And now you've got Israel wandering in the wilderness. Eventually, they come to this mountain. Exodus 19, 1 and 2. On the first day of the 3rd month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out from Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. So Israel has left Egypt. They're done with all of that. Now they are in the desert, and they come to this mountain in Sinai. Here they're going to meet God. If you recall, so easy for us to forget these things. There was no Bible, there was no Old Testament at this point. So Israel's view on God was based upon real-time information, what things were happening right in front of them. So there's this mountain that is there, and this is where God is going to meet them. So God speaks to Moses. Moses is the prophet and leader of Israel. He's the one that God speaks to and speaks through. In verses 4 through 6 of Exodus 19, listen to what he says. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. So, God is talking to the Israelites, and he's saying, I'm going to covenant with you. I'm going to make some promises, some deals with you. And if you keep them and follow me, you are going to be a kingdom of priests, a holy possession. You will be my treasured possession. So that's where we are right now. Now, God speaks specifically to Moses in verses 9 through 12. Let's see how he reveals himself. Again, the people are seeing God for the first time. They've seen the plagues, and they've seen God deliver them from the power of Egypt, but now they're going to meet him. And the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the 3rd day, because on that day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. Put limits for the people around the mountain and tell them, Be careful that you do not approach the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be killed. So God says, hey, purify yourselves. I'm coming to the mountain. God's presence requires holiness. And he says, purify the people, have them wash themselves, and be ready for when I come. Now, notice something. Not only does God's presence require purity around him, but it also requires distance. He says the people can't come to the mountain. If they approach the mountain or touch it, they will be killed. God's presence, even his presence on a massive mountain, is so holy that he says imperfect, sinful humanity must stay at a distance. Our sinfulness separates us from God. He is holy, we are sinful, and because of that, we can't approach him as closely as maybe we would like. It would be as if you were with a friend and they hadn't showered in 2 weeks and you were just like, whoa, keep your distance. Except it's much more than that. God's holiness requires that the people of Israel keep away from the mountain. The people are going to be afraid. But look what happens. Verse 16. On the morning of the third day there was thunder and lightning with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. So the response to God's presence is fear, as it should. Being that powerful should fill us with fear, especially when he is holy and we are not. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it with fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled violently. As the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. The Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. So Moses went up. Okay, two things. First, again, yes, God's presence fills the people of Israel with fear. They have just seen the plagues, they have just seen God's power, but now they see his very presence and they realize, wow, this powerful being that just defeated the Egyptians is now here, and they are filled with terror. But God calls to Moses, and Moses goes up. One man goes up to the top of that mountain. But then there's something interesting that happens. Moses talks to God for a bit. The last verse, verse 24, the Lord replied, "Go down and bring Aaron up with you. But the priests and the people must not force their way through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out against them." Who joins Moses? Aaron. See, God requires several orders in which he deals with his people. A prophet through whom he speaks, and a priest to be the mediator between him and the people. There will be a third, and that is the king, but there's no king over Israel right now. We'll see that as we get farther into the Old Testament. But right now, we have Moses, who is the prophet through whom God speaks to the people, and Aaron, who is the mediator to purify the people. And these two men are called up to be with God. Now, someday, there's going to be a better prophet and a better priest and a better king. Something that is amazing about Jesus is that Jesus comes, he is in the line of David, he's in the line of the priests, and he also speaks for God. Folks, our God is holy, and because of that, he is separated from us because of our sinfulness. There's distance that must be kept. But just like one man, Moses, went up before God, so also there is one man who stands between God and us, and he intercedes for us, he advocates for us, and ultimately through his death, he purifies us. Sometimes it's easy to forget about God's holiness, that we have no business coming close to him. And yet because of Jesus' work, we don't have to stay far away in fear for our lives. We don't have to shake when he speaks. We can hear him speak and we can love it. We can hear him speak and we can learn and hold on to him and call him Father. Because of Jesus' work, we don't have to keep a distance. We don't have to be afraid. We can come boldly before his throne as sons of the living God. God is holy, but we have something that is so much more amazing than what these people were experiencing. And I hope that that can fill us with encouragement and make us want to run to that holy God.